I've always been a guy in makeup. I started wearing makeup in 10th grade, and the world was not how it is today. 10 years ago, there were no guys in makeup on YouTube. There was no men in makeup parading the streets. There was no people like me, and I was very alone, and I was also fearless. I did not care that the world was not accepting me, and I would leave the house and people would spit on me. They would scream freak, and they would degrade me every single day. I fought back with rage. Just because someone insults you, it is not okay to fight back, but sometimes that's how we handle things.
We are slowly coming to the end of this series, which I've been doing since the start of the year, but a comment I've constantly received on every single video in surprisingly large numbers is cover alt-right femboys. Now, I didn't even know this was a thing, and it's not something that has been widely covered on YouTube or in the mainstream media, because I could barely find anything like concrete or any research done. So what we're going to do in this video that's different from the others, I'm not saying this community specifically has this problem, because I just don't think there's enough evidence, but we're going to look at racist alt-right femboys. We're going to talk about, why they might exist. We're going to talk about how the community feels about them, and we're also going to tie it back to Nazi Germany like we do in all these videos, because there were some sort of femboys in the German army, surprisingly, so we're going to talk about all that stuff. But yes, unlike the others, I don't think there is concrete evidence of these things, but it clearly is a thing that sometimes happens because enough people talk about it on my comments, and people are talking about it online. It's just not very clear how many of these people there are. But before we get any further, if you want to support my work, stuff like this is demonetized. So if you want to support me financially, check out my Patreon. You can also just like the video, subscribe, and maybe share the video. That helps me out a lot as well. And you can also come and join my community on my Discord and my subreddit. Both of those links are in the description. And if you want to follow me on social media, it is at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. And in terms of these videos, looking at the alt-right and everything, I think I'm going to do one more tomorrow on Friday. And then on Monday, we're going to do like a series finale where I'm going to talk about all this stuff. And maybe I'll keep making these videos, but maybe like 2 a month instead of like every single one. Like I said, I had to do my own primary research for this stuff. I had to go looking in these communities for conversations about racist alt-right femboys. So I went to Feminine Boys, which is a text-based subreddit, opposed to, the Femboys one, which is primarily pictures. So on the Feminine Boys subreddit, u/OG employee wrote racist femboys and said, why is it a meme that femboys are racist? I see this on Twitter mostly. I mentioned femboys while on a Discord call with some friends, and they all joke about femboys being racist. Kinda sucks. Some people had to make the rest of us look bad. Here are some memes I found, and it does seem to be a pretty prevalent meme. But then people in the comments wrote, so, ever since Tumblr banned porn, there's been a spike in Tumblr users on Twitter, which mainly consists of TERFs, racist femboys, and other people. So basically, Twitter is the new Tumblr, and since Twitter is kind of the norm, now everyone has been exposed to these types of people, this might be the answer you're looking for. So someone else wrote, it's a thing I've encountered a lot, actually. This subreddit is very heavily moderated, but in other places, right-wing femboys aren't that uncommon. I once encountered a trad calf femboy. His first post was, I want a tomboy mummy dom GF. And his second post was about how hedonism corrupts people's morals and goes against God. And someone else commented, it's funny how a lot of right-wing femboys are both I want a list of messed up sexual yearns and Hail Hitler at the same time, as if Hitler wouldn't look down on them in disgust at their kinky lusts. Someone else wrote, the main link is 4chan because D has a ton of femboys and 4chan in general has a lot of racist right-wing neo-Nazi edgelords. Why is it always 4chan with this stuff? Someone else responded to that saying, what I remember is the board cute boys from 8chan before the site died. I remember a fair share of far-right ideas being thrown around, mostly contained in 2 threads, one asking about right-wing femboys and others asking about left-wing femboys, with both threads having both sides arguing with each other. So on the femboy subreddit, someone wrote, can someone explain the edgy alt-right femboy archetype to me? So this post said, yeah, what's up with this over-prevalence of alt-right femboys? I mean, obviously there's the 4chan crowd trying too hard to be edgy and calling racism and such humour. I've been on more than one femboy Discord server full of abhorrent racism and misogyny and transphobia. Hell, I had a femboy friend who I considered fairly close with me. but had to stop speaking with them on account of some of the disgusting things they were saying online. I don't get it. It's incredibly ironic that so many femboys would associate themselves with people like that. Is it some sort of internalized self-hatred or a need to feel superior to someone else? Or have I just stumbled across a niche portion of the community? And someone replied, extremist ideologies always target disaffected youth. It's absolutely no surprise that femboys, a marginalised group, would be susceptible when anger, frustration and frankly emotional maturity meet. Bad things happen. Speaking from a personal past experience, it can be a form of catharsis, even if you don't really believe the ideas. Spreading them and seeing the effect on others is a strangely satisfying indulgence. Knowing it's sort of a political forbidden fruit, maybe it's an attempt to lash out and inflict some of the inner pain on others. It also tends to be a community that unquestioningly welcomes anyone willing to join, especially if they're of desired ethnicity. And then obviously femboys are some of the first victims if the alt-right ever gained power. But if you've been watching this series I've been making, you will have seen a lot of this stuff anyway. A lot of these groups who join the alt-right, whether you're a furry or a brony or anything else, a lot of the time it's because you've been ostracized by society. Now, femboy is an obvious case of people who would face a lot of discrimination because, as we all know, in Western countries as well as other countries, trans people aren't generally accepted. The UK is somehow worse than the US in this regard. Now, combine that with the historical view of gender norms. Now, if you're a man dressing up as a woman, I guess that's even worse to some people because you're saying you're a man, you're meant to be masculine, you're meant to act a certain way, and you're choosing to dress up as a female, and you're not even transgender, so you're not even saying you are a female. I guess that bugs people, and you see a lot of the hate people like James Charles and Jeffree Star get, who are both technically femboys. I don't know if they ever describe themselves as this, but you can see how that sort of stuff would drive people deeper into these online communities or these places like 4chan, and like someone was saying there, it feels good to say this stuff, and it feels like you have the backing of your community where you're accepted by other people who are marginalised. And of course, Nazi groups used to be way more underground, so you can imagine the types of people who would join them. But these days it feels like most fascist and alt-right groups are out in the open. So we're going to move on to Nazi Germany and femboys, and then we're going to move on to Jeffree Star talking about why he used to say a load of racist things. And I'm going to use that to really dive into why femboys might join the alt-right. But before we go any further, like I said before my other videos, I want to show both sides. And although in this video I'm already saying I don't really know about this stuff because there's not much research done and there's not much concrete examples apart from anecdotal experience, but I'm going to read what the femboys subreddit thinks of this type of thing. So a post from one of the mods said, systemic racism, individual anti-BIPOC prejudice, and this was when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on, and it said, I'm sure as you are aware the notion of racist femboys is quite widespread to the degree where every femboy is seen as a racist. Well, as your head moderator and subreddit founder, the only parts of white supremacists I want to keep around are their scalps. Feminine Boys is an anti-racist subreddit that believes in Black Lives Matter. I will ban people for saying racist things, and I will ban people for having racist post histories, even in other subreddits. If you see racism or prejudice against black, indigenous, or other people of colour, report it immediately. Nothing less will be acceptable. Also, our subreddit logo depicted a white femboy snoo. Needless to say, we abolished that a week ago without much fanfare. We'll be having a contest for a new logo soon, Black Lives Matter. So from that post, you see that particular subreddit of femboys has pretty good left-wing politics, anti-racist politics. So I'm happy about that, and I'm happy that they acknowledge that there are these members of their community and they're going to take a stand against them, which is good. They're not just going to accept them because they are fellow femboys. They're going to purge the racist ones from the subreddit. So that's good, and it feels like the stronger measures are being done in that community than other ones that do have explicit political leanings and pretend to be liberals or leftists. But now let's get into the history of Nazi Germany and maybe speculate a bit on how alt-right, neo-Nazi femboys can rationalise this stuff with themselves. Now, in my gay neo-Nazi video, we did speak about how the Nazis, before they came to power, had these members who were openly gay and everything. But when the SS faction came to power and purged the other members, and you had a massive homophobe like Himmler coming in, and he, cracked down on all that stuff. But this is an interesting article I found on the National Post, which is a centre-right, right-wing Canadian publication. But it is a very interesting article with some interesting pictures, which I'm going to put on screen while I read through the interesting parts. So, Cross-dressing Nazis, a German artist found so many photos of them published in a book. So this is written by Tristan Hooper at the end of 2018. So, over the years of collecting amateur photographs from the Second World War, German artist Martin Dahmen kept noticing something odd. An awful lot of soldiers fighting for Nazi Germany seemed to enjoy dressing up like women. He says, if the photos did not exist, you would not believe it. And then the article goes on to say, cross-dressing among soldiers happened on all sides in both world wars. Most photos of the phenomenon are as a result of a theatre performance put together by troops, with no women around to play Ophelia. A man would be enlisted to fill the role for laughs. But the phenomenon seemed to happen way more in German ranks, according to Dahmen. This may be due to long-standing German tradition of carnival cross-dressing. So describing this, it goes on to say, where many countries celebrate Mardi Gras with drinking and sexualized costumes, some German communities have a centuries-long tradition of treating it as a celebration of gender bending. In Cologne, one of the central mascots of the carnival parade is the Virgin, a pigtailed maiden that has been played by a man since the 1820s. Dahmen's book, which carries the rather dry title Soldier Studies, is a comprehensive catalogue of German soldiers dressed as women, in training, on the front lines, and even behind the wire at Allied POW camps. It's not just dresses, the photos often depict men wearing nothing more than women's underwear, or skimpy improvised cabaret costumes. In some cases, the undergarments may have been looted from towns invaded by German soldiers. The men in these photos were all fighting for a regime that persecuted gays, transgender people, and people who dressed up as women, and anyone else seen as a sexual deviant. So I'm not sure how widely known this phenomenon is from, this author and his investigations into this stuff, but just like how contemporary gay neo-Nazis like to talk about the gay members of the Nazi party before the night of the long knives, you could imagine that alt-right neo-Nazi femboys would talk about this stuff and how there is a tradition in German society that seemed to have an effect on why so many Germans, even in Allied POW camps or even on the front lines, would dress up as women on occasion. Again, this is all speculation on my part, but as part of my investigation, I thought it would be interesting to see if there was any historical precedent for Nazis who dressed up as women, and I seem to have found some. How much it affects anything is really up for debate. So lastly, we're going to talk about Jeffree Star. So Jeffree Star is a man who has a very successful makeup business and has presented feminine since they were in the 10th grade. But when they were younger, they used to say a lot of racist stuff online. And when this was uncovered about 2-3 years ago, they responded to it and said why they said these things. And they would say racist things, towards black people, towards Mexicans, say all this stuff. And let's hear from Jeffree why they did it and then analyze that.
Growing up, I've always been a guy in makeup. I started wearing makeup in 10th grade, and the world was not how it is today. 10 years ago, there were no guys in makeup on YouTube. There was no men in makeup parading the streets. There was no people like me, and I was very alone, and I was also fearless. I did not care that the world was not accepting me. I knew that I loved makeup. I know why I was attracted to makeup. I come from a family of chaos, alcoholism, and abuse. And when I discovered makeup, that was my happy place. I got to go play in makeup for hours and escape the horrible reality that was my life and my shitty fucking parents and my crazy upbringing. And 10 years ago, when I left the house, I wish it was like today. I think that people don't realize how it really was. And I would leave the house and people would spit on me. They would scream freak and they would degrade me every single day. And what did I do? I fought back with rage. And looking back, I am 31 years old now. And looking back at that person who had just graduated high school, who had turned 18, turned 19, and then was just out into the world, I was emotionally abused every time that I left the house. People did not accept me. So what did I do? I fought back with anger. I fought back with rage. And it's wrong. Just because someone insults you, it is not okay to fight back. But sometimes that's how we handle things. We're human beings. And the intent behind my words back then, it was not about race. I said really horrible, vicious things back to people to hurt them, to harm them, to shock them, and to let them know that you're gonna call me something, I'm gonna cut you back so hard and make you feel like a piece of shit because you made me feel low.
So it was interesting what Jeffrey was saying as someone who grew up presenting feminine. So saying they couldn't leave the house without getting abused. They actually came from an abusive household, and when they would go online, and Jeffrey became famous on MySpace, when they faced insults about being a femboy, they would respond by using their own slurs against racial minorities. Now, whether or not you believe Jeffree Star only did that because they were being abused and they're not actually racist themselves or whatever is your opinion, and I don't know too much about Jeffree Star outside of that and what they've done lately. But I can imagine this sort of scenario is true for a lot of people, not just men who are presenting feminine. And it shows the type of people who will resort to racism and who will use this sort of language, and the type of people who may join alt-right groups who are femboys because they are being abused by society, they're being abused at home and everything, and being a femboy, like Jeffrey was saying, was an escape, and then for other people a further escape may be joining this community and joining a subsection of the femboy community where you can say this stuff back to people without a fear of backlash, where you can say stuff that is racist to people abusing you, and people like, the Feminine Boys subreddit won't ban you or anything, and they'll help you fight back, essentially. And like Jeffrey was saying, it was the way they coped with the situation. So to conclude, the scale of racist, alt-right, neo-Nazi femboys, I guess, is really hard to ascertain. It's also really hard without interviewing one myself or having a long conversation with one to understand why they will join these groups and why they will be racist, and that's why we just have to speculate based on the research I've done, based on the stuff we've gone through in this video. I'd imagine it shares a lot of correlation with other things like gay neo-Nazis, gay brony neo-Nazis, gay furry neo-Nazis, all these different groups who feel ostracized, alone, seek this community and say this stuff for things like shock value or to fight back in their opinion and to believe his ideology, which inherently doesn't accept them, but because people from this ideology are accepting them at the current moment and using them as, reinforcements or part of their online army, then they are happy to go along with it. And as we've seen through the video series, just because people are what society deem different doesn't stop them from attacking other people that society don't like as well. If you are a white gay brony neo-Nazi or a white femboy neo-Nazi, just because the reality is any fascist movement doesn't really accept you might not turn you off in that present moment. So since you guys would not stop messaging at me about this topic, please let me know what you think of the video. Please let me know about your experience. Please let me know if there's anywhere I can investigate this further. Hopefully this serves as some sort of baseline for future videos, not just from myself, but from other people investigating this thing. If it really is a thing you guys wanted to know about and wasn't just a meme like we've seen the memes on Reddit and memes on Twitter. But anyway, if you want to support my channel, like I said before, all content like this gets demonetized, so please check out my Patreon in the description. Join my communities on Discord and my subreddit. Also follow me on Twitter at the Kavernacle and on Instagram. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.